The crash of the trapdoor echoed in the cramped cellar, bouncing off the stone walls and back into the eardrums of the three stunned people. The darkness was thick, tangible, like a viscous liquid drowning them. The silence that followed was even more terrifying than the noise. It was the silence of a freshly sealed tomb. No. Josh was the first to scream, his voice lost in terror. He rushed to the foot of the stairs, looking up at the black void that had once been their escape route. "Open up. Is anyone there? Open the door." He yelled, but only his own echo answered, a bitter mockery from deep within the earth. He frantically scrambled up a few steps, slamming his shoulder and hands against the underside of the trapdoor. There was only a dry, hopeless thud, thud. The door was as heavy as a slab of rock, unmoving. Mia burst into sobs, collapsing onto the damp ground, her hands covering her head as her body shook uncontrollably. Her worst nightmare had come true. They were buried alive. Only Ethan, after a moment of initial shock, managed to cling to a fragile thread of sanity. Fear ran like ice water down his spine, but the journal in his hand felt strangely hot. He pointed his flashlight at Josh. "Josh, stop it. It's useless. Useless." Josh turned, his face contorted in the wavering flashlight beam. "We're trapped, don't you get it? Trapped down here to rot. And you're telling me it's useless? Panicking won't help." Ethan snapped, his own voice trembling but firm. "We have to stay calm. We still have flashlights. And we have this." He held up the diary. The light hit it, making its worn leather cover look like a wrinkled, secretive face. "The thing that trapped us here. It wants us to read this," Ethan said, a cold realization dawning on him. "This is part of its game. And the only way to win is to know the rules." Ethan's logic, however insane, was the only life raft in a flood of despair. Josh stopped pounding on the door and staggered down, breathing heavily. Mia looked up, her face streaked with tears. They had no other choice. "Come here," Ethan gestured. "We'll read it together." They huddled together on the cold ground, their backs against the wall covered in scratch marks. 3 beams of light from 3 flashlights converged on a single point, illuminating the first yellowed page of the diary. Ethan took a deep breath, trying to keep his voice from shaking, and began to read. Dalat, March 12, 1945. Today is my first official day as the housekeeper at Solace Manor. My employers, Dr. Laurent and his wife, Mrs. Laurent, are good people. The master is a stern Frenchman but has a kind heart. The mistress is a gentle and melancholic beauty. But the true light of this house is young Miss Elise. She is only 8, as beautiful as an angel, and her laughter rings like bells through the hallways. Ethan flipped through a few pages. Arthur's initial entries were mundane, recording daily chores, small parties, and afternoons when the mistress taught her daughter to play the piano. A picture of a happy, peaceful family, a complete contrast to the deathly atmosphere of the cellar they were in. Then, a sudden change. June 4, 1945. Tragedy has struck. Miss Elise has suddenly fallen ill. A high fever of unknown cause. The master has used all the best Western medicines, but she shows no improvement. The mistress has cried her eyes out. The piano has fallen silent. The whole house is shrouded in worry. June 9, 1945. The angel has returned to heaven. Miss Elise did not make it. I have never seen such profound grief. The mistress fainted. As for the master, he did not cry. He just sat silently in his study, beside his daughter's body, his eyes empty, terrifying. I feel a part of him died with her. Ethan paused, swallowing hard. He could feel the doctor's pain, the pain of losing a child that he had only tasted a fraction of with his sister's passing. Mia sniffled beside him. He continued reading. Arthur's handwriting started to become shakier, more hurried. July 20th, 1945. The master has changed. He no longer treats the villagers. He locks himself in his study all day, reading strange books that are not medical texts. Sometimes I hear him talking to himself. Last night, I saw him secretly carrying medical tools and large cages down to the cellar. He told me it was to study a plague. But why must it be done in secret? August 5th, 1945. I know what he's doing. It's horrible. Young Danny, the gardener's son, has been missing for 2 days. I couldn't sleep last night. I heard faint screams from the cellar. A child screams. I didn't dare go down. I am a coward. This morning, the master looked exhausted, but his eyes held a crazed light. He told me that science could conquer even death. September 15th, 1945. More people have gone missing. The master calls it gathering materials. He is obsessed with something called the ritual of atonement. But from what I've overheard, it is not for atonement. He believes his daughter's spirit still lingers in this house. He wants to use life essence, the blood, pain, and ultimate fear of his victims, to create a new vessel, a new body, to bring Elise's soul back. He has become a monster. Josh cursed under his breath. Mia nearly threw up. The truth was 1,000 times worse than any rumor. They weren't dealing with a restless spirit. They were in a slaughterhouse, a place cursed by human madness. Ethan flipped to the last pages. The ink was blurred, the words written over each other, showing the writer's extreme panic. September 21st, 1945. The mistress found out everything. She screamed wildly, calling him a monster. I saw him knock her unconscious. And then he dragged her down to the cellar. He said a mother's love would be the perfect catalyst for the final ritual. Her screams. I can still hear them. I can't take it anymore. I have to get out of here. I will leave this journal in the stone niche as a warning to any unfortunate soul who finds it. Do not trust the name Solace. There is no peace here. Only pain. Only an entity born of madness and death, and it is hungry. The last line was smeared by a large ink blot, as if the writer had dropped the inkwell and fled in terror. Silence filled the cellar. The three of them sat there, stunned. Now they understood. The entity in the house was not the spirit of Elise or the doctor. It was something created from the resonance of all the pain, despair, and hatred of the dozens of victims who died here. The house had absorbed it all and become a malevolent collective consciousness. It wasn't seeking revenge, it simply continued to exist by feeding on the fear and despair of new victims. They were the next meal. As that thought crossed Ethan's mind, he heard it. A whisper. It wasn't in French. It wasn't the voice of little Elise. It echoed right inside his mind, painfully familiar. Ethan. Ethan flinched, shining his flashlight into the darkness. Who's there? What is it? Mia asked, her voice trembling. Did you hear something? Josh added nervously. Ethan didn't answer. He was listening. The whisper came again, clearer this time, full of blame. Where were you when I needed you the most? It was Lily's voice. His sister's. There was no mistaking it. Lily? Ethan called softly, his voice breaking. Is that you, Lily? Mia and Josh looked at him in horror. Ethan, who are you talking to? There's no one named Lily here. Josh said. But Ethan no longer heard them. Before his eyes, in the deep darkness of the cellar, an image began to form. A little girl in the white dress he had bought for her, her long hair sopping wet, dripping onto the dirt floor. Her face was pale, her lips purple. She looked at him, not with anger, but with an infinite sadness. I'm so cold, Ethan. No, it can't be. Ethan stammered, backing away, his back hitting the cold stone wall. The image of Lily stepped closer, her small, pale hand reaching out to him. Why did you leave me? Just for a game. You let me die alone. No. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Lily. Ethan cried out, tears streaming down his face. The guilt he had buried for 5 years now erupted, stirred up by the house's evil entity. It had found his weakness. It had infiltrated his mind, using his most painful memory to torture him. The maze of pain had opened. And Ethan Vance was the first to get lost inside. Ethan. What are you saying? Look at me. Mia's call was lost, a desperate, distant sound unable to penetrate the wall of memory and guilt the house's entity was building around Ethan. To Mia and Josh, they just saw their friend screaming and reaching into an empty space. But in Ethan's world, his sister was there, right in front of him, real in every painful detail. So real he could smell the mossy scent from her soaked dress. I'm sorry. Ethan sobbed, stumbling towards the illusion. I won't leave you alone again. I'll take you with me. Take me with you. Lily's voice whispered, echoing enchantingly in his head. It's so cold here, Ethan. Take me away from this place. The illusion of the little girl backed away, moving deeper into the cellar's darkness, her small hand still beckoning him. An irresistible invitation. Seeing Ethan so lost, about to step into the darkness, Mia couldn't bear it anymore. She rushed forward and threw her arms around him, pulling him back with all her strength. Snap out of it, Ethan. That's not Lily. There's no one there. The sudden hug and warmth from Mia was like an electric shock. The world swam before Ethan's eyes. The illusion of Lily began to blur and disintegrate. But before it vanished completely, its infinitely sad eyes no longer looked at him, but glanced straight at Mia. A look devoid of any childlike innocence. A cold, penetrating, and malevolent glare. Then it was gone. Ethan gasped for air, slumping to the ground, his body trembling uncontrollably. He looked around, seeing only the stone walls and the horrified faces of his two friends. Lily was gone. But the guilt remained, heavier and more piercing than ever. It knows, Ethan whispered, his voice hoarse. It knows everything about me. Ethan. What are you saying? Look at me. Mia's call was lost, a desperate, distant sound unable to penetrate the wall of memory and guilt the house's entity was building around Ethan. To Mia and Josh, they just saw their friend screaming and reaching into an empty space. But in Ethan's world, his sister was there, right in front of him, real in every painful detail. So real he could smell the mossy scent from her soaked dress. I'm sorry. Ethan sobbed, stumbling towards the illusion. I won't leave you alone again. I'll take you with me. Take me with you. Lily's voice whispered, echoing enchantingly in his head. It's so cold here, Ethan. Take me away from this place. The illusion of the little girl backed away, moving deeper into the cellar's darkness, her small hand still beckoning him. An irresistible invitation. Seeing Ethan so lost, about to step into the darkness, Mia couldn't bear it anymore. She rushed forward and threw her arms around him, pulling him back with all her strength. Snap out of it, Ethan. That's not Lily. There's no one there. The sudden hug and warmth from Mia was like an electric shock. The world swam before Ethan's eyes. The illusion of Lily began to blur and disintegrate. But before it vanished completely, its infinitely sad eyes no longer looked at him, but glanced straight at Mia. A look devoid of any childlike innocence. A cold, penetrating, and malevolent glare. Then it was gone. Ethan gasped for air, slumping to the ground, his body trembling uncontrollably. He looked around, seeing only the stone walls and the horrified faces of his two friends. Lily was gone. But the guilt remained, heavier and more piercing than ever. It knows, Ethan whispered, his voice hoarse. It knows everything about me. The moment the entity's focus left Ethan, it immediately sought a new target. Mia, who had just bravely pulled her friend from the hallucination, suddenly froze. Her arms, which had been holding Ethan, went limp. Her eyes widened, staring into an empty space. Mia? Are you okay? Ethan asked worriedly. Mia didn't answer. She clamped her hands over her ears, her face contorting in pain. At first, it was just one whisper. Then two. Then three. Soon, a flood of sounds inundated her mind. It was no longer a child's voice, but a horrifying chorus of dozens of different voices. Men groaning. Women weeping. Children sobbing. They weren't talking to her. They were reliving their final moments. It hurts. It hurts so much. Help me. Someone help me. Why? Why me? Danny misses his mom. So cold. Don't. Please, sir. Spare me. Fragments of despair, of physical pain, and of ultimate terror swirled in Mia's head. She didn't just hear, she felt. She felt the cold steel of the scalpel. She felt the hopelessness of being trapped in darkness. She felt the agony of tortured bodies. Her psychic sensitivity, a curse she had always tried to deny, had now become a wide-open door for all the tormented souls of this place to flood in. Stop. Please make it stop. She moaned, her body curling into a ball on the dirt floor. She was drowning. Josh watched the scene unfold, helpless. Ethan was broken down, and Mia was writhing as if being tortured. His pragmatism screamed at him to do something, to record it, to find a logical explanation. A vlogger's reflex took over. He shakily reached for his camera, his familiar weapon, his only comfort. Have to film this, he muttered. Need proof. He pointed the lens at Mia, but his hands trembled so much the image on the small LCD screen was a blur. He tried to steady himself and panned the camera around the cellar, perhaps with the unconscious hope that the high-tech lens could see what the naked eye could not. He panned the camera towards the rusty operating table. And his heart stopped. On the camera's LCD screen, the cellar was not empty. The screen was not reflecting reality. It was showing a different scene. The operating table was not empty, a convulsing body lay upon it. Josh squinted, trying to see clearly. He felt sick as he recognized that the body was wearing the same smoke-colored hoodie and sneakers he had on. It was him. Standing beside the table was a tall figure. Josh couldn't see the face clearly, but he could make out the form of a European man in a stained white lab coat. Dr. Laurent. The ghostly doctor's hands were empty. But as he slowly raised his hand over Josh's convulsing body on the table, a rusty, blackened scalpel materialized in his grasp, as if created from the shadows themselves. The doctor's eyes on the LCD screen suddenly looked up, staring directly into the lens, directly at Josh. A hideous grin stretched across the specter's lips. A.h. Josh let out a blood-curdling scream, throwing the camera away as if it were a piece of hot coal. The camera smashed against the stone wall, shattering. The LCD screen flickered one last time and went dark. He scrambled backward, tripped, and fell, his eyes wide with terror. The thing he trusted most, the tool he used to expose the truth, had just betrayed him. It had shown him an unimaginable vision. It had shown him his own death. The cellar fell into a relative silence, filled only with Mia's whimpering and the ragged breaths of the other two. The entity of Solace Manor had succeeded. It didn't need to manifest physically, didn't need to attack them. In just a few short minutes, it had used their own pain, sensitivity, and reason to defeat them. 3 people, 3 trembling flashlight beams casting weak streaks of light on the stone. They were still close together, but now, each was locked in a private hell, a maze of pain created by their own minds and nurtured by the house's malevolence. Ethan was drowning in guilt. Mia was lost in the screams of the dead. And Josh was haunted by the horrifying future he had just witnessed. They were completely divided. Broken. And in the darkness of the cellar, the hunger of Solace Manor seemed to grow even more intense. The play of torture had only just begun. Time in the cellar seemed to stand still. No one knew how much had passed. A few minutes. A few hours. They only knew darkness, cold, and their own private terror. 3 weak flashlight beams cast trembling, flickering light on the stone walls, like lost souls searching for a hopeless escape. Josh remained huddled in a corner, his eyes glued to the shattered remains of his camera. He muttered nonsensically, occasionally flinching as if seeing the ghostly doctor again. His sanity had shattered. Ethan sat with his back against the wall, his knees drawn up to his chest. He no longer cried or screamed. He had sunk into a silence that was even more frightening. The image of Lily, her words, her death. It all swirled in his mind, an endless loop of guilt. Only Mia, after the torment of the echoes subsided, began to regain some strength. The pain of the spirit still lingered within her, but it gave her a strange clarity. She understood the entity's intention. It didn't just want to kill them. It wanted to savor them. It was slowly draining their life force through their fear, despair, and pain. It's feeding on our fear. Mia's hoarse, weak voice broke the silence. Ethan and Josh didn't react. Mia crawled closer to Ethan, taking his cold arm. Ethan, do you hear me? The more we fear, the stronger it gets. We have to fight it. We have to do it together. Ethan slowly lifted his head. His eyes were lifeless. How can we fight it, Mia? It knows everything. It dragged my sister back from her grave. How do you fight the past? That wasn't Lily. Mia almost shouted. That was it. It used your memory to hurt you. You have to believe me. A sudden noise came from above. All three flinched and looked up. The trapdoor, which had been sealed like a block of stone, was slowly moving. A long, eerie creak echoed through the cellar. It didn't open completely. It just lifted slightly, creating a thin gap, just enough for a stream of less suffocating air to filter down from the house above. A glimmer of hope. An escape route. But Mia knew it was a trap. And then, it came again. The whisper of a child. This time, it didn't echo in Ethan's mind, but drifted down from the crack in the trapdoor. A weak, distant, and pleading call. Ethan. Help me. I'm up here. I'm so scared. Ethan shot to his feet, like a puppet on a string. All the apathy and despair on his face vanished, replaced by a crazed determination. Lily. He called out. I'm coming. Don't be scared, I'm coming for you. No. Mia grabbed his shirt, her voice frantic. It's a trap, can't you see? It's luring you up there. It wants to separate us. Let go of me, Mia. Ethan roughly pulled his arm away, something he had never done before. You don't understand. This is my second chance. I can't abandon her again. Guilt had completely blinded him. He could no longer distinguish reality from illusion. He saw only one path to redeem his mistake, even if that path led to hell. He rushed towards the stairs. Don't go. Mia screamed in desperation. "If you go, we're all dead." Josh, hearing Mia's scream, also vaguely realized something was wrong. He scrambled to his feet. "Ethan. Don't. It's safer down here." But Ethan heard nothing. He climbed the slippery stone steps with terrifying speed. When he reached the trapdoor, he pushed it up with all his might. This time, it opened with surprising ease. Without a moment's hesitation, Ethan climbed through the hole and set foot on the wooden floor of the study. Before disappearing into the darkness of the house, he looked back down into the cellar one last time. His gaze towards Mia was not one of love, but of blame, as if she were the one preventing him from reaching his salvation. Then he turned, and his figure was swallowed by the darkness of the hallway. The moment Ethan left, the trapdoor slammed shut with even more force than before. This time, it came with a dry click, like a giant iron bolt had been slid into place from above. The last hope was extinguished. Mia collapsed to the floor. It was over. They had been separated. Now, in this cellar, it was just her and a panicking, will-broken Josh. "It's over," Josh mumbled, sitting down and holding his head. "We're going to die here." Mia thought so too. But the entity of the house didn't want to give them an easy death. It wasn't full yet. Silence returned. But only for a moment. A new sound began. Mia and Josh held their breath, listening. The sound wasn't coming from upstairs or from within the cellar. It was coming from the walls. At first, it was a small noise, like scurrying rats. But it quickly grew louder, clearer. It was the sound of fingernails scratching on stone. Dozens, hundreds of fingernails. Mia realized a horrifying truth. The scratching wasn't coming from the surface of the walls. It was coming from beyond the walls. From the earth surrounding the cellar. The victims who had been buried around them. The materials the doctor had disposed of. Now, they were awakened. They were trying to scratch, to dig their way inside. To join the two trapped survivors. Josh realized it too. He let out a savage scream, his eyes bulging as he stared at the stone walls that were now trembling from the frantic scratching from all sides. Mia clamped her hands over her ears, but the sound still pierced through, pounding directly into her brain. She could feel their hunger, their craving to touch living flesh. Trapped in a stone box. And the things outside were trying to get in. Meanwhile, upstairs, alone in the darkness, Ethan Vance was following the call of his sister, venturing deeper into the deadly maze of Solace Manor. The hunt had entered a new, more brutal phase. Upstairs, in the thick darkness of Solace Manor, Ethan walked like a sleepwalker. He no longer felt fear. His obsession with saving Lily had become a shield, protecting him from the house's horror. All his senses were now focused on one thing, his sister's call. The house seemed to sense this. It no longer scared him with sudden noises or fleeting shadows. Instead, it became a silent guide. Doors creaked open before him like an invitation, then slammed shut behind him like a sentence. He had no way back. He could only move forward, where Lily's call was growing clearer. It led him to the second floor, down the long hallway where they had heard the ghostly piano. But this time, the hallway was silent. He passed the doctor's study, its door now shut tight, as if no one had ever entered. Finally, a small, white-painted wooden door, decorated with faded roses, opened on its own. Lily's voice came from within. Ethan stepped inside. It was a child's room. A dead childhood kingdom. The floral wallpaper was yellowed and peeling. In the corner was a small, pretty bed, the bedding still neatly made but covered in a thick layer of dust. A wooden horse with soulless eyes stood motionless in the middle of the room. The air here was cold, yet carried a strangely sweet scent, faintly like old candy and perfume. This was undoubtedly Elise's room. Ethan. I'm here. Anne's whisper seemed to come from the antique vanity table. On it, among silver combs and empty perfume bottles, sat a small music box. It was made of silver, engraved with dancing angels, tarnished by time. You're in here? Ethan asked, his voice trembling. Open it, brother. Open it, and we can be together forever. Ethan stepped forward, his trembling fingers reaching for the music box. In his mind, he saw Lily smiling at him, a smile no longer pained, but full of promise. Meanwhile, in the cellar, a true hell was unfolding. The scratching had become frantic. It was no longer the sound of fingernails, but of hard objects, of bones, scraping against stone. The stone walls trembled violently. Dust and plaster rained down from the ceiling, creating a hazy fog in the weak flashlight beams. Josh couldn't take it anymore. He jumped up, his eyes wild. Shut up. All of you, just shut up. He screamed at the walls. But the scratching only grew more frantic, as if in response to his challenge. Josh spun around, pointing a trembling finger at Mia, who was still sitting on the ground, her body shaking but her eyes strangely focused. It's you. He hissed. This is all your fault. You led us here. You can feel them, can't you? You're one of them. Josh, calm down. What are you saying? Mia tried to speak, but her voice was lost in the deafening scratching. Stop pretending. Josh lunged at her, his face contorted with panic and paranoia. You want us to die here to take your place, don't you? He grabbed her. Mia, in a survival reflex, pushed him away forcefully. Josh stumbled backward, falling against the cart of medical instruments. The metal tools clattered loudly. Josh's crazed eyes landed on an object on the floor. A long, rusty scalpel. He picked it up. If I have to die, he muttered, I'm taking you with me, you witch. He staggered towards Mia, the scalpel trembling in his hand but aimed straight at her. Mia backed away, her back hitting the trembling wall. She looked around desperately, searching for something to defend herself with. Her flashlight beam hit a long iron bar, perhaps a crowbar, lying near the wooden boxes. She snatched it up. A terrifying confrontation was about to happen, between two people pushed to the brink of insanity by fear. A cracking sound echoed. Louder and different from the scratching. Both Mia and Josh froze, looking towards the source of the sound. A large chunk of plaster from the opposite wall fell, exposing the stones beneath. And then, a single stone was pushed out from within, thudding onto the floor. A small, dark hole appeared in the wall. The scratching suddenly stopped. In its place, another sound began. A moan. Not one voice, but dozens of moans blending together, a collective groan of pain and sorrow. It was no longer aggressive, only filled with endless suffering. Through the small hole in the wall, Mia didn't see a monster trying to get in. She only saw a dense mass of earth, roots, and glimmering in it, white bone fragments and tangled black hair. Mia suddenly understood. She had been wrong. They weren't trying to get in to attack them. They were simply writhing in their mass grave. They were trapped souls, bound to this place. And the presence of the living, the fear she and Josh were radiating, had unintentionally amplified their suffering tenfold, causing them to claw in desperation. They weren't the weapon. They were the power source. Click. Up in Elise's bedroom, Ethan's finger touched the small latch on the side of the music box. He opened it. But what came out was not a sweet melody. It was a shrill, harmonic scrch, like the sound of grinding metal, drilling straight into his brain. At the same moment, in the cellar, the collective moaning abruptly stopped. Mia felt a terrifying change. The air in the cellar felt like it was being sucked out. A colossal, cold energy was being drawn from the walls, from the earth, from the wailing souls themselves. It gathered into an invisible vortex, then shot upwards, through the stone and soil. It shot towards Elise's bedroom. Towards Ethan. Mia looked up in horror, understanding everything. No, she whispered. It didn't lure Ethan up there just to kill him. It had used her and Josh's ultimate fear to amplify the pain of the spirits, turning them into a living battery. And now, it was using Ethan's own hand, his act of atonement, to activate the music box, the final switch. The entire energy of suffering from Solace Manor was being channeled for a single purpose. The ritual of atonement wasn't to resurrect Elise. It was to resurrect something far, far worse. In the bedroom, the music box continued to screech. Ethan collapsed, clutching his head in agony. But from inside the box, a thick, cold black smoke began to pour out. It didn't dissipate, but gathered in the center of the room, slowly taking the shape of a tall, stooped figure. The figure of a man in a white lab coat. Dr. Laurent. But the eyes of this newly reborn entity were no longer human. They were two deep, black pits, glowing with the red light of pure malevolence. It looked at Ethan, writhing on the floor, and then smiled a lipless smile. The play had reached its finale. And the main character had just stepped onto the stage. The entity in the form of Dr. Laurent floated in the middle of the room, the black smoke that composed it swirling slowly, powerfully. It didn't look down at Ethan right away, but gazed around Elise's room with an almost affectionate air. It took a deep breath, though it had no lungs, as if savoring the air of its lost kingdom. The screeching from the music box had stopped. Ethan lay on the floor, the pain in his head subsiding, replaced by a terrifying emptiness. He looked up at the figure of the doctor, and a mad part of him still clung to a sliver of hope. He had done it. He had completed the ritual. Elise. Where is she? Ethan whispered, his voice hoarse. And where is my sister? The entity slowly turned its non-existent head towards Ethan. Its glowing red eyes bored into him. It spoke, not with its mouth, but with a voice that echoed directly in Ethan's mind, a deep, cold voice, carrying the resonance of decades of resentment. Elise. And you are still so naive. They are not here. They were merely the excuses. Excuses? Ethan was stunned. Yes, the entity said, drifting closer, its shadow falling over Ethan. I used the pain of losing Elise to begin. And you used the pain of losing him to complete it for me. Don't you see? Pain is the purest form of fuel. Torment, hatred, despair. They are the bricks that build immortality. The truth hit Ethan like a sledgehammer, shattering his last shred of hope. He wasn't a redeemer. He was an accomplice to a demon. You think I wanted to resurrect a child? The entity laughed, a dry, joyless sound. I moved beyond such limits long ago. I wanted to become pain itself. A god of suffering. And this Solace Manor is my cathedral. All the souls who died here, including my own daughter, were my first followers. And now, you, and your two friends down there, will be the newest members of my congregation. It reached a hand of black smoke towards Ethan. You should thank me. I will free you from the burden of your guilt, by making you a part of it, forever. Down in the cellar, as the energy was drained away, the sudden silence was deafening. The scratching, the moaning, all of it vanished. Only the ragged breathing of Mia and Josh remained. Josh, stunned, dropped the scalpel. The psychic shock seemed to have knocked him out of his madness, replacing it with a sober terror. Mia wasted no time. She rushed to the hole in the wall. Josh! Help me! This is our only way out. Josh looked at her, then up at the ceiling, where Ethan was. He said nothing, but quietly nodded. He knew he had been wrong. He knew Ethan was in mortal danger. Together, they used the iron bar and their bare hands to widen the hole. Plaster and stone crumbled. Soon, the hole was large enough for a person to crawl through. Freedom was not on the other side. It was a mass of cold, damp earth, mixed with roots and soft, whitish things they didn't dare look at too closely. It was the mass grave. They had to dig, to claw their way upward, just as the spirits had done before. The smell of earth and death filled their nostrils. Every handful of dirt they moved seemed to be mixed with long strands of hair or bone fragments. A disgusting, gruesome escape. Finally, Mia's hand broke through to open air. She pulled herself out of the ground, right in the middle of the overgrown garden behind the mansion. Dawn was breaking. The night mist was beginning to dissipate, revealing an indigo sky. Mia and Josh, caked in dirt and mud, looked like two corpses who had just clawed their way out of their graves. They didn't rest. They ran around to the front, rushing into the house through the open main door. Second floor. The girls' room. Mia yelled. The house seemed to fight against them. The wooden staircase felt endlessly long. The hallway was dark and distorted, as if the walls were closing in. But they kept running, driven by regret and friendship. They burst through the door of Elise's bedroom just as the entity's smoky hand was about to touch Ethan's forehead. "Stop!" Mia screamed. The entity turned, its red eyes flashing with annoyance at being disturbed. Two more devout sheep, offering themselves. "How nice!" "Ethan!" Josh yelled. "Snap out of it, man!" Seeing his two friends, filthy but alive and fighting for him, something inside Ethan reawakened. He wasn't just a lonely sinner. He was a friend. A brother. A lover. "Mia." "Josh," he whispered. "It's useless," the entity growled. "You cannot fight me in my own church." It waved its hand. A blast of black air shot towards Josh. In a final moment of courage, Josh didn't dodge. He raised his arm to shield himself and yelled, "Mia." The music box. It was his act of atonement. He had seen his death through the camera lens, and now he chose to face it. The black air enveloped him, lifting him off the ground. He didn't scream, just looked at Ethan and Mia one last time, a look of both fear and peace. Then his body convulsed and fell to the floor, motionless. "Josh!" Ethan screamed, the pain of losing his friend tearing through the fog of his guilt. He scrambled to his feet. Mia, tears streaming down her face, understood Josh's intention. She lunged for the music box on the vanity table. It was the heart, the conduit of the ritual. The entity let out a roar of rage when it saw what Mia was doing. It turned to stop her. But Ethan had already thrown himself at its smoky legs, trying to hold it back for even a second. "Go, Mia." Mia grabbed the music box. She was about to smash it, but an intuition flashed through her mind. Smashing it might release all the energy chaotically, killing them all. There had to be another way. She looked at the box, at the silver angels. She didn't think of the mad doctor. She thought of Elise. The innocent child who was the first victim of this tragedy. Her sensitivity was no longer a curse, but a weapon. She focused all her emotions, not fear, but compassion. "Elise," she whispered, clutching the box. "It's over now. Dr. Laurent went too far. Your pain is enough. Be at peace. Pass on." She didn't channel fear or hatred into it. She channeled sympathy and a prayer for true peace. "No." The entity roared one last time, the roar not of a god, but of a defeated foe. The hand reaching for Mia began to disintegrate. The black smoke that formed it became unstable, vibrating violently. Mia's words, her emotions, had introduced an incompatible data into its system. A virus called forgiveness. The entity dissolved in a silent scream. The black smoke dispersed, not vanishing, but being sucked back into the walls, floors, and furniture of Solace Manor. The house shook violently, chunks of the ceiling falling down. "We have to go," Ethan yelled, pulling Mia's hand. They ran out of the room, down the cracking hallway, and scrambled down the collapsing staircase. They fled through the main door and didn't dare look back. By the time they reached the pickup truck, the sun had risen above the pine ridge. The warm, fresh morning light chased away the fog in the long night of terror. They turned to look. Solace Manor still stood there, grimly on the hill. But it was different. It looked older, more decayed. The windows were no longer like staring eye sockets, they were just empty, soulless voids. The malevolent, ghostly life had been drained from it, leaving only a sad, empty shell. Mia cried. Ethan cried too. They cried for Josh. They cried for themselves. They had survived, but the price was far too high. Ethan started the truck, and it struggled down the dirt trail. As they passed the iron gate, Mia glanced into the back of the truck. She saw Arthur's diary lying on the back seat, where Ethan had tossed it the night before. They had forgotten to destroy it. They had escaped Solace Manor. But its story, its pain, and the memory of their fallen friend would forever be a part of them. An invisible ghost that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. The house may have fallen silent, but its echoes would reverberate forever in the souls of the survivors. 6 months later. The city was as loud and bustling as ever. The crowd still hurried, the neon lights still blazed, and life went on at a frantic pace, as if trying to erase and bury all old, sad stories. But in a small apartment in a quiet district, time seemed to have frozen. Ethan's apartment was minimalist to the point of being empty. No decorations, no souvenir photos, only the most essential furniture. The walls were a cold white. The curtains were always half-drawn, blocking the city's harsh sunlight. It was a sterile space, a desperate attempt to give the darkness no place to hide. Ethan had dropped out of college. He couldn't continue his thesis on old architectural works. Every time he looked at an old blueprint, he saw endless hallways and window-like eye sockets. He worked a boring data entry job during the day and locked himself in his apartment at night. He was thin and pale, his eyes always shadowed by deep, dark circles. Mia was his only regular visitor. Their relationship had changed. The love was still there, but now it was wrapped in a shell of tragedy and silent understanding. They were two soldiers returned from a war no one else knew about, and they could only find solace in each other. Today, she brought him some chicken soup. He ate it reluctantly, tasting nothing. "You couldn't sleep again?" Mia asked softly, gently brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. Ethan shook his head, saying nothing. Sleep had become a luxury. If he was lucky enough to drift off, he would see Josh again, see his friend being swallowed by the black smoke. Or worse, he would hear Lily's call from the bottom of a deep lake. Mia's gaze accidentally fell on the bookshelf. Among a few bland self-help books, there it was. The leather-bound diary of Arthur the housekeeper. "Why do you still have it?" she asked, her voice holding no blame, only a weary sadness. Ethan followed her gaze. He put the soup bowl down. "So I don't forget," he said, his voice hoarse. "So every day I wake up, I have to remember what my curiosity and my obsession caused. It's my punishment." "That's not punishment," Mia said. "It's torture. You have to let it go, Ethan. We survived. We have to keep living. Keep living." Ethan let out a bitter laugh. What about Josh? Does he get to keep living? Silence filled the room. Josh's name was a wound that would never heal. His Na.k.e.d Truth vlog channel had gone dark, the last video a trip to some abandoned temple. No one knew about the fateful trip to the Highlands. The story of Solace Manor, their story, would forever remain a secret. Mia stood up and cleared the dishes. She knew saying more was useless. She could only be there for him, hoping that one day time would lessen the pain. As she was about to leave, she paused at the door. "Ethan," she called softly. He looked up. "Last night, I dreamed again," Mia said, her eyes distant. Her sensitivity hadn't disappeared after that horrible night. On the contrary, it had become sharper, like a radio that could pick up frequencies ordinary people couldn't hear. "What did you dream about?" Ethan asked, a hint of worry in his voice. "I didn't dream of Solace Manor," Mia replied. "I dreamed of the diary. I saw it on your bookshelf. And I heard a whisper coming from it. Very faint. A different whisper. Not Elise, not the doctor's. A strange voice." She paused, swallowing. "And then, I dreamed of a family. A young, happy couple. They were driving up to the Highlands. They were talking about buying an old mansion to renovate into a bed and breakfast. They said they'd found a beautiful, abandoned place on a hill called Solace Manor." Ethan froze. A chill ran through his entire body. Mia looked at him, her eyes filled with a new kind of fear. "We silenced the house. But its story is still there, inside that diary. All it takes is one curious person, one person with some pain in their heart to open it. The cycle will just start all over again, won't it?" Her question hung in the air, unanswered. After Mia left, Ethan stood before the bookshelf for a long time. He stared at the old notebook. It lay there, silent, harmless. But he knew that inside that worn leather cover was a virus. A virus of madness, of pain, patiently waiting for its next host. They had escaped the house. But they had taken a part of it with them. And somewhere, on the winding roads of the Highlands, a car was probably rolling along, carrying dreams and hopes, heading towards the misty hill where a new tragedy was waiting to be written. The echoes of Solace Manor would never truly end. I hope you had a terrifying experience with today's story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on other horror videos. Goodbye, and see you next time.